Welcome to another episode of Show Me the Firo, where I'm joined by our Firo extraordinaire, Reuben, and our Firo enforcer, Lucas. Welcome to the show. There's been a lot that's going on in the forum these days. We've got an update on our block reallocation. We've got a new poll. It goes on for now another 2 weeks and supersedes the previous one. But one thing we're guaranteed to get is, well, it seems like we're guaranteed to get, is a community fund.
Yeah, really excited about that. I think that was that was probably the primary reason why the poll was started to actually create a community fund. But often it seemed like the discussion kind of veered towards miners and masternodes. But yeah, the main purpose was the creation of the community fund.
Yeah, and I was one of those people that would veer off towards the miners and the master nodes. But my logic was really if you can increase the master nodes and reduce supply and increase demand, then that has a knock-on effect with the development team and also the community fund. And I'm particularly happy actually that, well, that's if it works. We can't promise anything, but that was my logic anyway. One of the things I'm really happy about is the option that's getting highest votes at the moment is to get a 10% community fund, right?
What, really? No.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, community fund, right? Yeah.
Yeah, community fund, sorry. So that is what I'm looking forward to because that gives us quite a bit of resources, Reuben, doesn't it? Especially if the price goes up a little bit from here, but even at these prices, it's still a good chunk of change each month, isn't it?
Yeah, if you think about it, it's 2/3 of what the development team is getting, right? Because we're getting 15%, the community is getting 10%, and that actually allows, like, really empowers the community to almost like do things like that the core team traditionally did, and arguably, it's like stuff like community management, homegrown grassroots activities, rewarding translators. It can be anything really. So I really feel that the community is in a better position to do that, because if you take a look at our core team, right, it's all development based. Some community managers, and you can see that developers don't tend to be like the best marketers or stuff like that, and it's much more powerful when it's coming from community members, not necessarily the core team.
And that's the thing. I kind of have to hold myself back because in my head, I've already spent the community fund. It's kind of like we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, and but that's not how it's obviously going to be run, Reuben. Right? I don't think it's settled yet how it's going to be run, whether or not we have some kind of committee or voting for whatever.
So I think to begin with, because remember, this is kind of a trial, right? I do think that whatever is going to be a net benefit, but there's going to be some, I guess, like learning ropes, right? Now obviously this is my own personal opinion, especially this is how I envisage it to be managed when I first created the poll proposing the community fund. But the idea was eventually it'll be kind of like a matching fund. So those who are kind of like familiar with Gitcoin, it's kind of like voting with your money, right? Like for example, like there's this proposal that's up, they're seeking donations for, let's say, an audit, or let's say like a huge participation in a huge conference. Let's just say something like that, right? And what that means is that people can donate to that, and the more people donate to it, the more the fund will be matching. And the way the algorithm works is it's called quadratic voting, meaning that if like a single big whale comes in, like, oh yeah, I donate like a $50,000, the community matching fund isn't gonna be like complete. It's not like a 1-to-1 match. Maybe you'll give a little bit only, but if let's say 1,000 people gave like $10, the community matching fund might actually give more than what the community has given. So in some cases, if you look at the way the community it works, like you donate $1, it has like a $50 effect. So I hope people can understand that, or that is where I want the community fund to eventually go.
That sounds actually really good to me, Reuben, because it's kind of like I'm in the camp that I do think that if you are highly invested into Firo and you are absolutely committed, you probably deserve a little bit more say, but you don't want it to get to the point where you just railroad everybody, right? So it's kind of like the whale gets diminishing returns in terms of influence, but they do get slightly more for obviously devoting more resources to the actual donation of whatever project we're voting for.
Sure, yeah. And I guess the tricky bit about quadratic voting is that you want to kind of prevent like the whale from like splitting his thing into like various small ones and just like it's 1,000 of me, right? So the way that has been done in Gitcoin is to kind of to tie the donation vote to a identity, and obviously as a going to expect people to dox themselves or whatnot, right? So I was planning to use stuff like the forum account, right, with a certain age, a certain trust level that will be factored in when doing this. So like, yes, technically someone can be spending like multiple personalities to create different forum accounts and talk in different ways, but that's a lot of effort to kind of rig the vote. I mean, like, yeah, maybe you can maintain 3 or 4 different accounts, but you can't maintain 100, 1,000 accounts. So I think that would probably be the kind of where I want it to be. Gitcoin has a similar type of thing, and we have to expect that it's not going to be totally automated. There will be some moderation, like if the vote looks like really fishy, then some committee can check in and like, hey, does this look like the same person? Are they coming from the same address or something like that, right? So there will be some manual oversight, but yeah, so that's kind of how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. The next thing I'm really looking forward to. Sorry, Lucas, did you have something to add?
Yeah, actually. So, a lot of people have been asking, like, overall, how we plan on handling this, which you kind of just covered. But one of the things I wanted to kind of ask, and I'm sure other people probably have this in mind too, is how long exactly will this take to get rolling, really?
That's
Because the tokenomics is easy, but
yeah. It's a great question. So so the first thing is that although I was talking about like the community matching fund, I think it would be unrealistic to start with that model first. I just wanted to clarify that once we deploy this, it probably wouldn't start like this, because there's a lot of development resources that you need to do to get all this quadratic voting going and all of that. So we'll probably start with some sort of community elected committee, do that for a while, but with the intention to move into this quadratic voting. And this is something that maybe even the community fund can vote, can fund, right, this quadratic voting thing. The question that Lucas brings up is how soon can this happen? Now, this can actually happen pretty fast. I think there's another, I don't know, slightly less than 2 weeks left before the poll is finalized. And I spoke to our devs. They said that it would probably take about a couple of days to do the changes. Maybe 2 weeks to test and make sure everything is smooth, and then we can roll it out. So let's just say, like, give or take a month from the end of the poll. And I think that we can roll this out really quickly, and I hope that the community agrees that this is a kind of exploration phase, right? Like, I think I did post a request to say we should reevaluate this in 6 months time. Then we can see, well, has this change in tokenomics done anything? Even if we're not going to change it, I think it's good to have this official like checkpoint to say, okay, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? Lucas, I guess you or anyone else can weigh in on what you guys think of this idea. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good idea. I think it's important that we actually evaluate what has an effect and what doesn't have an effect. I mean, obviously, there's probably going to be some things that are going to have an effect that may have nothing to do with the tokenomics, but at least it'll hopefully give us some idea. as to what we're doing right. For instance, like Reuben's perhaps maybe more skeptical that the extra yield on running a masternode will provide enough incentive to move price. Where me, on the other hand, more optimistic on that respect. Um, so it'd be good to see whether or not I'm just over optimistic or Reuben's more pessimistic on that, I guess. But I imagine it's probably somewhere in the middle. Um, I mean, there's not much room to go now that we look to do this tokenomics. I don't think there's much room really to like either take from miners or anything like that so much anymore. I would like to find 5% maybe in 6 months or a year, depending on the price of Firo. I mean, if the price of Firo is high, then it could be that the community fund is extremely well funded and it doesn't need any additional allocation, like to make it 15% or something to match the dev fund.
Yeah. One of the things I'm quite careful about, right? Because yes, masternode holders in our experience are the most, I guess, passionate and active members of the Firo community. Especially, I don't know, do you agree, Lucas? I mean, I'm looking at the mining channel, but if you take a look at the people who are spending, at least a few times a week to participate in Firo community, most of them are like they probably hold like a masternode or something, right? Would you say that's a fair assessment, Lucas?
Yeah, it really does tend to lean towards that because even when you are seeing somebody talk about how they do mine Furo and such, almost every situation it winds up being like, well, I'm also a holder, but, and so on and so forth. And so I personally think that they have a little bit more of a balanced view because they do have the experience of being the miner as well as a holder. Um, not knocking the just straight up master node holders. I mean, there's certainly plenty of them that are going to have, they're going to at least be empathetic to the other position and so on and so forth. But, having actual hands on experience on one to the other is quite a bit of a difference. But yeah, I hardly ever see anybody that is claiming that they mine Furo but aren't a masternode holder. And of those that do claim that they're just miners and not holders, like when the conversation isn't going their way, unfortunately, they get a little rowdy. For example, that one in the Discord not too long ago, if you guys recall.
Yeah, we
but,
won't name. I think I did a meme today. If that.
So, so yeah, so it does lean that way.
Yeah, I mean, I did see in the forums, a couple of miners come in and some will say, like, I've supported the project, but I don't hold a lot of Firo, or, I'm not mining it currently. I'm mining Ethereum. I was considering, I mean, like, obviously there's some people that's been mining. I mean, I'm actually more of a miner than a masternode holder, right? I mean, you guys know I mine, but I don't even actually hold any masternodes. So, and why I think that it's kind of telling because even when we were engaging with the miners on the Twitter thread, they're like, oh, can you give me some examples of like other proof of work projects that have done well? And it's more like, oh, the price went up and therefore I'm paying more attention to this coin, right? And let me make it very clear, we are not blaming, I mean, at least I'm not blaming miners for the price decline, right? I'm very aware that the emission, is what, $10,000-$12,000 US dollars a day of sell pressure, right? And our volumes are like 2 million plus or so. That shouldn't have a huge effect, right? Like there are other things that we have to consider and be realistic about, right? So let's say now we are cutting miners from 50 to 25. Well, now it's just 5,000 US dollars worth of sell pressure at current prices, and honestly, that shouldn't have an effect.
No, that's true, but it's 5,000 now sell pressure now, but you also need to take out the other side of the balance sheet of now you have also incentives to actually take Firo off the market,
Yeah.
right, with the masternode yields. So it's kind of like I don't know. I'm hoping that has an outsized effect, but it remains to be seen. We'll just see how it goes. But that's
Yeah,
my hope
because
anyway.
it's switching from 35, like with the current poll. What
To
was the
50,
to
it's 50.
50?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a big increase.
Is it around 42%, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, they're voting for 25% minor reward, 50% masternode reward, 10% community fund, and obviously to keep the development fund the same, which I commented on the forum earlier. I thought it was actually interesting that because a lot of what I heard from miners were complaining with the original poll, especially when they saw like 10% or 15% to go to miners. They were saying, oh, look, we've just got a whole bunch of masternodes that are voting to enrich themselves at agreed. But if you look at this latest poll, you actually find that the masternodes, it looks like for the most part, are not actually voting for the highest reward for themselves. They're actually picking like a middle ground. And it seems to be, in my opinion, they're actually voting for the 10% of the community fund, where the original one, it was only like 30, 50, something, and then 5% for the community fund. So I guess that was less attractive to the masternodes. So they just went full on masternode.
Yeah,
Because at
I
least
do.
that's my interpretation.
I think this is quite interesting because remember we had when we were interpreting the results of the previous poll, which had, I don't know, 10 or so options, and the top two options were very, very close, right? It was like neck and neck, like maybe like a 1 or 2% difference between the top two. And obviously one of the suggestions said, let's not drag on this poll, let's just take an average of the two, right? Like which I was tempted to do, but I also thought that maybe it's better to just have like a bit more narrow poll, right? And it does seem that the number one choice is actually the in between option between the previous top two options, which I found quite interesting. Yeah.
It's actually very close to your original suggestion, isn't it, Reuben? If you actually think about that, it's only like a 5% difference in the mining reward, extra mining reward, in 5% less on the community fund. So it's actually very similar. I thought your original suggestion was actually on point. If I'm honest, I thought that was a very good middle ground, and I'm quite happy with the winning poll right now. The next on the list I wanted to talk about was Elysium's very close, right? How far do we think we are away from releasing that?
It does look like most of the huge bugs have been squashed. But Peter is kind of like troubleshooting a particular issue with like the max slowdowns, which for some reason only affects max. So hopefully once that's kind of looked at, then we can start releasing Elysium. I do think it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens. I think it's a big step forward towards moving into a privacy infrastructure play. But it's not the end goal. There's a lot of other suggestions as well, and I hope to involve the community more in this. Like at least get us a sentiment poll to see if this is something that the community is interested in, right?
Well, yeah, this is something that I really actually looking forward to with Firo. This is like part of my, I guess, long-term optimism for the project itself is the fact that you can actually just use it as a service for many other coins, and where you're able to bridge essentially stable coins initially, I believe, which is going to be the sort of the main purpose. But you can use any asset you can bridge onto Elysium and privatize it. I presume at some point even like regular NFTs, right? Because the good thing is about an NFT is you may like the NFT, but if a particular owner, for instance, may devalue the NFT, particularly if you look at the political world right now. I mean, what kind of things will this enable, Reuben, in terms of?
Well, the first version of the first version of Elysium, basically will allow bridging of like I guess basic ERC20 tokens or equivalent like BEP20 tokens from any sort of EVM chain. Like our partnership with Oracle allows a lot of that, right? But I think they're focusing first on stable coins, which kind of makes sense to start with, because obviously this is something like the most exciting, right? And I do note that some people have been asking, what about creating our own stable coin? And this is something that actually Poromin is also interested in, right? Now, I mean, this is my personal view, not the core team's view, obviously. And Parmin says that, oh, maybe we should take a look into stable coins, and my personal opinion is that we should not be going down that path. That requires, first of all, I think it still remains to be seen whether algorithmic stablecoins will will hold up under pressure, right? Because all these things kind of work until they don't. Um, and the kind of people that you need to launch stablecoins are quite different, right? You need oracles, you need like DeFi, you need like this economics type of people to kind of run it. Um, Firo isn't currently set up to make this type of decisions, right? Obviously, there's stuff like Haven, but it does. It's still a big question mark about like yeah. So let's go experiment, but I don't think it's an experiment that we are well equipped to take advantage of. And what I think is that people are underestimating is that stable coins in general would definitely attract regulatory scrutiny, right? Because you are mimicking fiat, right? And that's, now you combine that with privacy, it's a privacy stable coin, right? That's it's going to, if it's going to take off, it's going to get like a lot of regulatory attention. And I think that many coins that do that now are probably underestimating what that looks like if it becomes successful. So what we were thinking is that rather than have that risk, we should be bridging other stable coins. Like, it can be algorithmic stable coin, but we are not the ones, handling the risk of issuing that stable coin. If you see what I'm saying, we are like a privacy as a service type of thing. And like a great example of, like, if we could do bridging over DAI, DAI doesn't have any blacklist or stuff like that. And that's a great option for a stable coin to bridge over versus more centralized stable coins that may implement blacklists. Yeah.
Yeah, because Dai has performed at least pretty good so far, I do believe, right? In terms
Yeah.
of,
In terms of
I mean,
holding
like
the pack. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess it's one of those things that remains to be seen because, like you say, they work until they don't. I believe there's been like a couple of projects where you've had an algorithmic stable coin, but there's like been a hack or something like that, or there's been like a glitch in the code and
Yeah,
it's
or it's
destroyed the project.
powered by Ponzinomics, like
Yeah.
people don't see that. It's hard to understand these systems, and DAI isn't technically a algorithmic stablecoin. It's like a collateralized, like over collateralized stablecoin, and that's a lot more easier than a full algorithmic stablecoin. Yeah.
And I thought it was had something to do with like a loaning mechanism within Ethereum. Is that right? Something to incentivize keeping the peg as close as possible?
Yeah, I mean, there's some like internal mechanisms to kind of regulate that pack. There's an internal marketplace for that, and it's not really because it's like you're providing. The most basic way, you provide Ethereum and other stuff, and that you use that as a collateral to get maybe like say 30% or of the value of your Ethereum, right? And that's what it means by a loan, because you put in your collateral, you get half of it in stable coins, right? And if your collateral falls down before a certain price, there's a liquidation mechanism that people can take advantage of and things like that. So yeah.
I was just thinking it is kind of attractive if with Elysium, if you can bridge a stable coin onto essentially the Firo network of like masternodes, in terms of the quick finality of being able to like do a swap between Firo to a stable coin and then back again because it's on the same network. You'd assume that because it makes sense for, like, I guess the traders and who I would describe as the apes among us, the people who have taken the next evolutionary step.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's going to be a big one for the use of Elysium because of the fact that like with the people cracking down, the regulations coming and so on and so forth, I don't see how it's not going to start getting a little bit more tracked when it comes to the stable coins and such. And so having a way to be able to make it so that they're actually private, so you can't see uh, necessarily who they're coming from, and maybe perhaps a little bit of where they're going to, um, could be a big difference in the future of crypto, because it's definitely coming.
But from what you said, I think Reuben is right. It will attract some attention, and I think it is a project we need to kind of think about that in plan for contingencies to try and perhaps maybe harden the system towards censorship and things like that, so we can get to a point where we can't be taken down. And then I think if a government comes to that realize, this is why I think obviously Bitcoin is still around, because if it was easy to take down, it would have been already, right? But instead they look to regulate as opposed to just shut it down.
Even the fact that, like, potentially it's easier to co-opt something like Bitcoin at this point, because of the fact that they have their claws into it a little bit. So why take something down that like most people are going to be investing in and they have interests in? When it comes to something like Firo, they don't really have quite the same ability. And so I'm not saying necessarily that Bitcoin is compromised or anything, but at the same time, like, even as has been pointed out multiple times in different articles that I've seen, is the fact that, like, when stocks are up, Bitcoin goes up. When Bitcoin goes down, stocks go down. So there is a correlation now, which implies that it's, like, what we were saying yesterday is that there is now a certain degree where Bitcoin is no longer really the parallel, it's part of that same system. So, if they already know that there's at least the hooks into it and it can be dragged around however it needs to be dragged around, then why would you remove something like that? Whereas anything that could be working around that system to offer up the parallel, that's what they'll definitely go after.
Probably just would caution that it may not be, I'm not saying that they haven't got their hooks into it or they have got their hooks into it. But I'm just saying there is like some correlation in terms of like how people view assets in terms of risk. Like it's been for such a long time that cryptocurrency has been seen as like a risky investment. So if you're trying to invest in growth stocks like the FANGs and stuff, it would make sense that when the market's feeling like they've got an appetite for risk, that both asset classes would rise. There would be some correlation, and then at which point then it would train the market essentially itself. If they see like a divergence of, say, the stock market going up, they would assume that Bitcoin's going to do the same, or vice versa. So I think there will be some kind of training in that respect. But I guess it depends. We'll see what happens, whether they decouple if there was, let's say, a significant financial downturn in that event. Because unlike the stock markets and these growth stocks, I like the idea of cryptocurrencies being a little more bankruptcy resilient, in terms of, as long as people can mine the things and keep it secure, it can live. But that's not the same with a company if you have to pay wages and expenses and things like that. So I actually see cryptocurrency in that respect is actually a much less risk.
If I can dodge back real quick, so for Poorman, I know that he's messing around with the smart contracts on the Firo blockchain. Has he considered potentially seeing about maybe trying to do that with the Elysium layer?
So the thing that currently that he's been doing is something called Firo VM, which is an EVM based side chain. And just yesterday he was interviewing new developers for that project. So the idea is that you have this side chain of Firo. You can bridge Firo into this new side chain system and do all this DeFi stuff. And obviously with any sort of side chain, it's not going to be as decentralized, but it allows all this type of, I guess, like DeFi stuff, right? He and one of the reasons why he's developing that is that he was actually engaged by by a pretty large company to develop a blockchain for them for one of their systems. And he was like, yeah, let's do this other thing on the side, right? Now, to do that with Elysium and to do that with Lelantis or even Lelantis Spark technology is quite a different process, because Spark was designed to be working for like UTXO based coins, right, or UTXO based models. While all these EVMs and all this sort of stuff, they work on they basically work on an account based model, which has a lot of different things that you need to do. It's like Spark probably has to be like completely redesigned for that. That's not trivial work. I mean, this was just a question that came up the like yesterday actually, because Paramin was asking our researchers how tough it would be to port this over into an account based model, and both our researchers said like it's gonna be like a completely new different protocol, right? So um they I mean, while we can bridge from other EVM based things into ours and then like deal with it in our stuff, to have our own privacy EVM, there aren't actually that many solutions out there. There is stuff like anonymous Zeta, which was published by JP Morgan, that promised to do this. We don't really know like the benchmarks of like how good that privacy is. It's still, I guess, something that's in development. um I haven't actually made a decision like, is this something that we should be looking at, because we don't want we have a set amount of resources, and uh we can't be affording to like do all these explorations in totally revamping something that we built, right?
I
Yeah.
presume this was why Porman was voting for high research
Yes,
on
that's
his
right. I
option.
mean, Parmin
Okay.
really wanted to have this huge like research portion and whatnot, because he's saying like, look, let's dedicate the tokens emission to improving the project, right? We've already had 6 years of distribution. Let's use this as the emission as a funding mechanism to accelerate Firo's development, which I think is not a wrong idea. I mean, it's just another point of view. So yeah. Mm.
My personal opinion is that would be great with what Paraman wants. I just think it's maybe something a little further down the road where I think there may be an opportunity.
Yeah, so right now there are a few paths in the fork which are quite tough decisions to make, right? And obviously, the one option is, yep, okay, let's go full on in Elysium version 2. Let's build our own privacy ecosystem. We can have some sort of like smart contract capability, and that's going to be like a huge project in itself. We can probably do it in a year or so, but it does mean that we can't be doing other stuff, right? It's this whole project on its own. The other thing is to actually look into integrating with perhaps other chains that support like custom blockchains, things like Avalanche subnets, or Symbol subchains, or any other stuff. And this is not like a Ethereum roll up or Ethereum contract. It's it has to be a custom blockchain to support our features, and only a few networks support that. So that's another option. And another option is completely merge with another token ecosystem, or do all of those are very drastic measures. I kind of like the options whereby we are part of the ecosystem but maintain some sort of independence, right? Like we're not kind of tied down by the rules of let's say the Ethereum ecosystem or something like that. This is why I kind of like stuff like subnetwork, subchains, where we are free to kind of set our rules and make everything like privacy focused, as opposed to one where we kind of have to work within the constraints of like a token standard or something like that. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what's the censorship resistancy like on that? I mean, can they be leaned on? I mean, to try and like
So
put some restraints
with
on us?
with Avalanche consensus, there is some risk in the sense that if the state has control of the network, right, they can kind of interfere with communications of the network. And this is like very, very like you have to be like specifically targeting it, right? Say, I'm going to interfere with this network thing. So you're talking about ISP level control. So it's not as resistance for that, but it has other benefits, as like almost instant confirmation. It doesn't require this proof of work, proof of stake hybrid, and this is something that I guess Avalanche is solving, but it's like it's the nature of their consensus. I have to get fuller details from Sproutset, who's still diving into it, and obviously we'll be considering all of this before we put it forward, which is why if you take a look at the forum thread that I posted, it's still kind of scant on details because I want to just kind of gauge community sentiment before we put on a full proposal. Because like if the community is like, no, don't bother looking at that, then well, we'll stop looking at it, right? But if there is some interest, we're like, okay, let's explore the feasibility more, because you have to realize that exploring feasibility is also time and resources, right? So we'll probably be doing that over the next few weeks just to kind of see what our options are. But it was just a very rough gauge of sentiment whether people were against or for the idea. Yeah.
I just also wanted to mention, Reuben, a post you wrote on the forum recently. It was labeled, for anyone wants to go and see it, is the reality of exchange listings, attracting institutional investors and influencer marketing. I specifically wanted to draw attention to the call to action from the community in terms of the community themselves need to be the positive change that they want to see, change that they want to see. They need to actually step up and actually talk about Firo and raise awareness and obviously its virtues in terms of how it's beneficial to society and why people should actually care, because there's a lot of benefit, particularly if you look at where I guess the direction of legislation is going currently in lots of countries in terms of some form of social credit in previously thought jurisdictions that you would never think you'd see it. There's a lot to actually communicate, and it's also why I created the a section on the forum for memes, for people to post memes, and it was kind of I wanted really kind of capture what it is about Firo that fixes so many issues that humanity's facing right now. Mine was kind of, I guess, humorous. I kind of, in terms of memes, I quite like when you take like an element of truth. It doesn't have to be obviously realistic, but when you combine some truth with some humor, because I think that people instantly get it at that point. And so I'd encourage people to really think about what problems Firo can solve for the community and wider community, and try their best to try and think of a good, eloquent meme that really communicates the message of Firo, so that when we come across news stories as we're going through social media, like many of us do, we can actually put forward Firo's message in a way that isn't like a wall of text or something that's really tech blah 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 jargon. You just put a picture that just kind of illustrates pretty much instantaneously what Firo's about, and raise awareness that way.
I mean, I think I'm actually surprised the post hasn't gotten more replies, because it really, like, what has been the community complaints. Lucas, you're the community manager. Like, do you think this post kind of summarizes well, I guess, like, what are the gripes of community, right? What are the few things that you've seen and I feel like this kind of like
Yeah.
caps it all up, right? Yeah. You want to talk a bit
Yeah,
about that?
pretty much, because everybody thinks more listings and we need marketing, which they're not necessarily wrong on the marketing department, but the solution to marketing is not getting marketers or even paying for somebody that's got a name and so on and so forth, or brand for that matter. And I keep trying to hammer this a little bit in the forum. I mean, not the forums, the Telegram, because of the fact that like a lot of really all the marketers really do is they figure out what the it factor is for something, and then they just have the money to plaster it everywhere, and then people do the rest. Like, I don't tend to buy things just because I saw an ad for it, or that somebody random on Twitter said something about it. Like I'll look up something if I don't have a family member that uses it, or if I don't have a friend that uses it. Like I had never heard of YouTube Advanced until a friend of mine brought it up to me. Like they didn't need marketing to get it to me, but yet one of my friends had heard of it, who heard from another person, who heard from another person. And then he told me about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's like a YouTube Premium without having to deal with all this other stuff and all that jazz." And so,
I
bada bing,
think
bada
I
boom,
think that
right?
app has been taken down.
Yeah, yeah, it has. Although I heard it's something to do with like NFTs or something.
I
But
was going
I
to
mean,
say, because that
nonetheless,
marketing,
I just
I guess works. Because I hadn't heard of it, so I was like, oh, word of
yeah,
mouth
see,
in action.
exactly. And that's exactly something. It's something you want, but like you hadn't heard of it because there's no real marketing for it. But then I just did it, and voila. And so like it's exactly that. Like it's just a matter of figuring out like what people are wanting, how Firo fits that bill, and then ultimately us going out and doing it. Let's point out what's that game that everybody, all the YouTubers, it was a meme because all the YouTubers, that mobile game. No,
Among
no, the mobile
Us,
game.
Among Us,
Uh, no, it's Shadow something.
Shadow
Shadow
Legends.
Legends.
Oh, that
Raid
was
Shadow Legends. There we go. Raid
paid
Shadow
though.
Legends. So it was everywhere, right? Raid Shadow Legends, Raid Shadow. I've never once looked at Raid Shadow Legends, and like you can look at all the memes of it, and it's like I don't even know what this game is. They've never played the game. Blah blah blah. A perfect example of like how you can have all the marketing in the world, but like no one's interested in it really. You're gonna have your people that will play it and so on and so forth or check it out, but by and large, it's like how much are they spending versus how much they're getting. Now, if you had a friend that played it and they said, "This is amazing," what's the likeliness you're gonna potentially get it after that? So, like it really is just a case of like they find the it factor, they blast it everywhere, and then what it really comes down to is that maybe somebody sees it and says, "Oh," and then they check it out potentially, and then they contact blah blah. So I get how people get into the attitude of we need just marketing through like big huge group, but honestly, it's doable just from the community.
You take a look at the people shielding Zcash, Monero, and what. They aren't a very large group of people, maybe or like 100 people or maybe less, right? But you see enough people talking about it. You're not thinking about is this 1,000 people or 100 people. You just see it, and a lot of the time they have like very simple messaging, like choose Monero for your privacy and stuff like that, right? Now I just kind of want to talk about a little bit about how the community can help, because I think this is something that I spoke with Fiend, and like maybe the community wants to help but doesn't know how to, right? And there are a few things that community is much better than the core team doing it. So for example, let's say that I have had no contact with this interviewer, because right now, how do I get interviews? How am I? How are we getting exposure with this? So this thing is generally like it'll be through a reference from a friend that has been or that knows the influencer. They're like, hey, Ruben's really cool. You should like interview him. It's a really interesting project. And then the interviewer will be like, oh yeah, let's take a look at it, right? But it is very different for, let's say, if I says, hey, do you want to interview me? It's the chances of that happening are a lot less versus a more organic someone, like maybe a long standing user of this long standing viewer of this influencer or like YouTuber, and he's like, I really want you to cover this subject. That's a lot more powerful than me going to the influencer and saying, hey, will you cover Firo? And most likely he will say no, or he'll say that this is my price, right? Versus if enough of the community members who are existing viewers say like, look, you should cover this. This is really cool, and we are cool with this. There's no, we have a lot of things to be proud of, and I feel that if we can sell that to these people, this is something that community can do. So like reach out to people that you already follow, that you know think that are a good fit, and do that. That really costs very little, 5 minutes of your time or something like that, right?
I sort of think that Firo, out of like all of the crypto community projects, like have it backwards. It's like a lot of projects, they talk the talk but don't walk the walk. It's like we're walking the walk but we're not talking the talk, and it's like that's the easiest part to solve and do. And all it requires is a little bit of dedication, a little bit of time for really everybody who watches this video right now, or goes on the forum, goes on Discord, or the other one. I feel like Joe Biden right now. But one of the other techniques or strategies that I have is what about like building infrastructure, for instance, that influencers use, or like shop stores use, e-commerce use. I was looking into, like, for instance, like I use I have a WordPress store, WooCommerce, and I was looking a while ago. I mean, there may be better options now, but I was looking for, like, good checkout pay crypto options, and there was very few around. And ones that I found that whose coin I liked, they were going to charge me, and it wasn't. At the time, it's not like I'm getting many crypto transactions, but it's kind of like, well, I really want to include crypto and try and grow that side of a business, and so they were charging, and it didn't have all the coins I wanted. At the time, I really wanted Monero, but there was an issue with apparently something to do with the addresses or something, that they hadn't included it yet. And so anyway, I think that is possibly a good service in terms of if you can actually provide, like, people who want to embrace crypto, maybe not even Firo, but they want a good crypto option that's not going to, like, cost them anything. But if we can include, for instance, some clause, you can include whatever coins you want as long as one of them's Firo. And I just assume that once people see, Firo and Nerf, they're going to get, like, they're going to get curious at some point, because it's kind of like when people contact me sometimes, like on social media, maybe about a story or something. Like the first time I see it, I may not pay attention, because that you get contacted quite a lot and you don't know it's a big deal. But once you, like, 3 or 4, 5, 6 people send you the same thing, then you're like, okay, I'll check this out. And it's kind of like, I assume the psychology is a little bit like that with people. Once they see something that it keeps popping up, then at some point they get curious enough to go and actually do some research. Like, what is this thing?
Actually, like there are options. Like, for example, we are on some of the largest payment processors, which is like coinpayments.net, and Now Payments, and many crypto sites, or like merchant stores that accept coin payments. All they need to do is to enable Firo as an option. There's no additional integration costs, right? So if you see someone that's already using coin payments, Now Payments, or even like Binance Pay, all they have to do is enable Firo as an option, right? And that's something that people can do. It's so even if you have your own business, or you see a business that you like and like, oh, they're already using it, just tell them to enable that as an option, right? And it's really so easy.
Particularly if they're already using something like coin payments.
Yes.
Because they've already gone through KYC with that. When coin payments first came out, it was non-KYC, and I was like, oh, great. And then pretty quickly they required KYC, which is why I don't use it.
To be a merchant or to pay?
To be a merchant.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be a merchant, is one thing, but I mean, what I'm saying is that if an existing store is already,
you've already gone through that process anyway, so it's just a case of then just clicking Firo.
Yeah.
So it's just, I was thinking it'd be good if there was just some kind of more of a protocol way of doing it that was completely, just a merchant that wasn't relying on a third party, so to speak, a company like coin payments are.
Yeah, I mean, the benefit of this type of payment things is that they can accept a lot of crypto. Like, for example, with Now Payments, right? There's tools and plugins for Shopify, WooCommerce, OpenCart, WHMCS, Magento, Zencard. I mean, like, all the major ones, right? So
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
have one of this stuff, you already can just put it in at very little cost. So even if you're like, not because let's be real, right? Someone is gonna like no one's gonna like develop a custom payment solution to just accept Firo, right?
mm,
Like it should be really easy for them. So if there are all these plugins available, and they should just use it, and that's why yes, it's centralized, but it's also extremely convenient. And I think it's a good starting point rather than asking, say, oh yeah, you need to spin up your own BTC Pay
but you just
server
see
or
pacer.
something like that,
Yeah,
and get that all set up. And most merchants are like, I'm not ready for that level of commitment, right? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. No, I agree. The other thing I kind of thought may help us, or is I really like Cointree, but for some reason, like privacy coins on there, you can't leave a message. Like the whole point of why you're sending normally a donation to someone that you like is to say, "Hey, I like your work. This was a really great video," and you want them to actually see it, right? You want to
Yeah.
know that you want them to know that you appreciate what they're putting out. And currently, privacy coins are at a disadvantage on that. And I think that's kind of something that could do with being resolved, either whether it's working with whoever runs Cointree, or whether or not, and if there is an appetite to try and resolve that, to try and figure out a solution for ourselves and provide that as a service.
Cointree gives allows you to like send anonymous messages, or is it something that
No, so
like if you use a transparent currency, would you know who it came from? Is that perhaps why, like to prevent people from giving like anonymous death threats, maybe?
um,
Or is it something that you have to know that person or something?
I'm not sure of the actual technical reason for it, but I can't really think of a reason, because if you can actually register that a payment has been set, like as you're about to type out the message of like, "Hey, blah blah blah, great show," or something, I don't know. You should be able to leave a message. And I mean, just because you've sent a private transaction with a privacy coin doesn't mean that every transaction doesn't, needs to be private, right?
Wait, Cointree is run by Naomi, right? We can probably talk to her.
Well, I did message her on Telegram, but she said something to do with the privacy coins couldn't leave a message for some reason, and I'm not sure whether or not this is
I
something
think
that
I think
would.
that's more maybe like a Monero thing or whatnot, because there are ways to
Oh,
do it,
okay.
but we'll see. I'll
Because that's
double
that's
check.
the kind of thing that I'm working on. Would like to work on, if first of all, approach Naomi, see if there's an appetite for her to actually implement it, or if she needs help, that hopefully like the community can provide that for her. And because I mean I really want to use the coin tree actually, but it's
Yeah.
just like, really, you don't say
To
Nero,
to 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 kind of like make sure people aren't confusing what Cointree is. This is crypto Cointree, which is COINTR.ee, and not the Australian Cointree, which is a Australian exchange. Yeah, so yeah, they share the same name, but they are totally different things. Yeah.
particularly once we have a fund or something, if we can either build our own thing or assist other projects out there first, first instance, try and assist them if needed, because I imagine these things necessary. If you encounter a problem, I'm not sure whether she had to fund it. I'm not sure how expensive it would be, or whether, or it's, so there's a lot of unknowns that I don't know about. But I would just like to pretty much solve that situation, whether it's assistance or whether it's we kind of develop our own thing.
Yeah.
I'd opt for assistance at first, because I like Naomi. She makes good stuff.
Yeah, she is.
Um, Donations to the dev team. We have a thread on our forum for us to donate to the development team, because at the current prices, we currently need $3.80, I believe, to pay for the existing commitments and expenses of the project. There is a cash buffer, but that could run out fast, and we're already having to cut back. So what would be really great is if we can all come together and donate to the development team. there is a benefit of getting a Firo Fox NFT that I believe Reuben is responsible for developing, and these NFTs have unique traits. So I hope mine looks like a badass one, Reuben. Right?
No
And
promises.
yeah, and yeah, in order to get one to be put on the whitelist, you need to donate 10 Firo or more, or $50 equivalent of a different coin.
Yeah. And so far it's 24% funded, so we've already had 18 contributions, so that's pretty cool. And really hope to see more. And so the Firefox NFT, we'll be sharing more stuff. And just to give you an idea of what Firefoxes are, first of all, look, I'm creating Firefoxes with my own personal money. There's no core team funds involved, right? And also with an artist that comes from my hometown, and I like to support him as well. So this is kind of like the stuff that I want to see from the community, right? And in a way, I'm kind of acting like a community member here. And the idea is that I'll be using Feral Foxes to kind of like reward community members that contribute to the project, not necessarily just donations. But like, let's say you want to contribute some code, you want to contribute documentation, you want to contribute with, like, getting us on a show or something like that. These unique traits will reflect that, right? Like, that means, like, if let's say you did some code, there'll be a trait that shows that you contributed code, and these can only be earned, right? And obviously there'll be the more normal, well, not necessarily normal, but there'll be uh the other NFTs that don't have these traits but can be bought, right? And we'll be also planning to like release those, like, maybe we can whitelist those that donate or contribute to the project first, or bought Firo Punks. We're still working all of that out, but I just kind of wanted to reassure people that, look, some people have a very negative connotation of NFTs. Like, here we are using it as a community building tool. We want people to be proud to contribute to Firo in a way to kind of show off, to say, like, look at how awesome and my contribution is, and I earned this, right? Rather than, let's say, just giving people money, which I guess is less interesting for.
So it's much less interesting, actually. I'm really looking forward to just, well, now I've got a sense of anticipation. What will what are my traits going to be?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
but I mean, like, this is really fun, and two other community members also offered to help out, Altcoin Gamer and Steven. So these two people will be helping us, and what I was also planning is that some of the proceeds would also go towards, like, let's say when you sell these NFTs, some of those proceeds, after covering my costs, would be also channeled towards the core team fund. So I think that would be a nice idea as well. Yeah.
The last thing of the evening is I wanted to direct people to an episode, well, an article that Reuben did with CryptoFireside.com. It has quite an epic tale of the history of Firo and Reuben's place in it. And it kind of, once you realise just how many twists and turns that the project's taken, and just the level of adversity it's overcome and still around right now, largely due to Reuben's contribution. Would you like to comment on, Reuben, in terms of your direction right now, in terms of the project, where you see yourself going forward?
I mean, I did write that other post, right? Maybe it's better for you guys to talk about that post rather than me talking about it, and then I can chime in. Lucas actually scolded me for writing this article.
Yes, I did.
It was like, it was, talking about me taking a step back. Maybe you guys talk about that first, and then I'll chime in, because I find it tough to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to talk too much about it, Ruben. All I wanted to let you know is I've got a great deal of
Because you
respect
don't
for you.
agree. You don't agree. With me doing that,
No,
right?
no, I don't. And well, really, I understand your position that you don't want to be perhaps maybe the face of Firo going forward, but at least front facing. But I really do also want to emphasize just before people like freak out who haven't been on the forum is that Reuben, you are going to be working behind the scenes,
Yeah.
making sure that the Firo machine is running nice and smoothly. But I think Reuben had got to the point where he's just like having had enough in terms of dealing with like the daily stresses that are really just superficial, in terms of dealing with some negative aspects of the community, who complain about when Lambo essentially, and things like that. That really his time is better spent sort of really managing the project anyway, in terms of making sure people are paid, the administrative side and the planning side and research side and coordinating between different teams. I think that's really actually where his time is better spent, in where he gets to the point where if he's not being drained by, well, and uplifted, I would say, by some obviously the positive community members. But in times like this, I think it's easy to get drained when you see the price and you see people fussing about, when moon. So, but no, I'm glad really that Reuben isn't like leaving or anything. He's just taken a step back from the limelight. And
Yeah, I mean, honestly, some people think that I enjoy the limelight. I think those who know me, that I don't, I I I never sought out to be leading this project. It was a consequence of things. I started as a community manager, right? And and suddenly, like, these things kind of fell into place because I was offering, say, oh, maybe I can help here, maybe I can help here, and then somebody, oh my god, I'm helping with everything right now, right? And suddenly getting involved with the project much more than I had expected. And I don't have regrets, but I guess I just wanted to say, like, first of all, look, I'm not going anywhere, right? I'm still a part of the project. Like, even though I'm stepping back, it's if you take a look at me, I'm much more active on the forums now because I'm not spending my time, looking at the chats and dealing with individual people, which shouldn't be my task anyway. I think there are sufficient opportunities to interact. Like, the forum is a great place, right? And I think that's a much better uh time, right? And the other thing is, I feel that I wish there were more people speaking about Firo rather than just me, right? Because if you take a look at our YouTube videos and all of that, it's a lot of it is me, right? And I feel that
I
maybe,
don't think
yeah.
I've seen anyone else but you, Reuben. I mean, I haven't
Yeah. Yeah, it's
gone it
been a
through it, but
while
yeah.
since we had anyone else, and I was thinking, like, maybe my presence is kind of stifling that. So, I'm doing this, for a variety of reasons. One, which I think that, the community should be stepping up with this type of things. Like, you want to talk, like what you're doing with this show, right? Getting more voices on so that it doesn't seem like I'm the only one calling the shots, which I'm not. But I just want to make sure that that's really clear. And I also feel that this, I've obviously burnt out. If you take a look at the messages that I get, or you just even take a read at the post, it's very emotional, right? Like, I was telling someone else, I used to kind of laugh at celebrities that were complaining about negative Twitter posts and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, you're a celebrity. You're rich, you're famous, you have everything, and then just because of a few mean tweets, you already get depressed. And well, now karma is biting me in the ass, right? And this is crypto, right? I mean, even Bitcoin and everything is taking a dump, right? And or like other people who are saying that I'm, a dictator, or like, some sort of I find that very sad, because like I really try to do the right thing. It may not be the right thing, but the heart's in the right place. And it's kind of funny, because after I wrote that post, a lot of these people came to apologize to me, but it was in a very like, sorry, I still don't agree with you. I still think what you're doing is wrong, but please continue to work. And it's like, yeah, because I actually told them, say, okay, what more do you want? I've already stepped back, right? Like, you don't want me to be saying anything for the project and whatnot. Fine, you guys say it, you guys direct, right? And then you asking me to create polls over things that I didn't propose, right? You're like, I have this idea, Reuben, can you start this new thread? And then I get the heat for putting up the thread, right? Because it's not my idea, So yeah, it's frustrating. So I know this is a minority, I know that there are a lot of people that care and for the project. And I know that these people tend to be more silent supporters. Like, I receive a lot of messages also, like saying, hey, Reuben, really appreciate your work, even in the forums. So that's really good. But I wish, like, they should be also more vocal. Not saying that they have had to sing praises about me, but about defending the project from these almost, like, I would say, toxic detractors, right? Like, yeah, you don't believe in the project, just leave and go. Why would you stay and continue like shitting on the project that you don't want to be part of, right? Like, it's just so puzzling. Like
It's like we have like a hand, like, well, not even a handful. I wouldn't. Well, maybe there's a handful. I don't know everyone that's contacting you, but it seems like there's a dedicated few that like must be like some form of sadist, because otherwise, if you didn't enjoy crapping on the project, like, why would you, right? It doesn't make sense unless you're enjoying it. And there's a couple on the forum, and I must admit I do. I did have a moment of weakness where I trolled back a little bit, but
even
yeah, I
Lucas
think
lost his school.
yeah, Lucas. And but in terms of what you said, Ruben, in terms of I mean, you didn't set out to be in the limelight, etc. I just will say one thing, and that is sometimes the best leaders are the ones that are reluctant to some degree, because they're the ones not seeking power, not seeking to exert their influence on others in a way that wouldn't be in their benefit.
I mean, like, look, even among us, we don't even agree on all things, right? And I don't think I've ever tried to suppress your opinion. I'll say my point, and I'll be like, yeah, this is what I think from my experience and my point of view. But I never say like, oh no, that's a stupid idea or stuff like that, right? Like.
It has been like on Telegram, actually, Ruben. It wasn't that long ago. Like, tempers almost flared for like briefly, but it wasn't coming from a place of like trying to attack someone. It was like we
Yeah.
both like wanted to get to the same place, but we just didn't agree on the direction.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
And I think we can remain respectful, right? So like,
yeah.
oh, calling me a pig or like dog shit or something like that.
Wait to end the show, Ruben.
No, but on the other hand, like, look, on the bright hand, look at the people donating. There's been really generous donations, and like just within a day or two, we already like 25% funded. That helps a lot. And I just want to kind of shout out, like, not just to the community members, but even members of my team, right? Many of them, they have been offered much, much higher pay, like several multiples of the pay that they're getting from Firo, and they have chosen to stay because they believe in the project. They like working with me. They like working with this thing, and we have to give thanks to them, because people think that, oh yeah, the devs is just like taking on the money. They actually have much, much better monetary opportunities out there, and we should take this opportunity to give thanks to them. Like, most of these offers are at least double than what we are offering, right?
Yeah, I really think they are also the unsung heroes that really that don't get mentioned very often. And I also want to thank Lucas. Lucas, whose arm I had to twist to get him on this show.
Really? Yeah, the
Don't like being on camera.
Yeah, I was helping him out. It was like a masterclass of manipulation. Oh dear. But yeah, I much
But yeah,
appreciate it.
oh, no sweat, no sweat. I thank you for having me.
No worries. And
Um,
I know the pains, like, because you have to clean up like your room behind you and stuff, and it's
yeah,
not
and
just a
as somebody
podcast.
that's not only a hoarder and a pack rat, but also lazy, I'm like, I just kidding.
But let me just like end on a more positive note on what's going to be coming, right? Like look, we are proceeding. Elysium is close, right? That's a really big thing. And the other thing is that the tokenomics proposal is passing through. That's like super exciting as well, right? It will be quite controversial. We'll get some flack, but we're also getting a bunch of people who are really excited as well, right? So I think and the community fund, that's huge. And on top of that, Spark, as soon as we complete Elysium, all our resources was just gonna be like all on Spark, and that's gonna be like pretty cool as well. And yeah, we have Firo Fox's NFTs, we have all this other stuff. Please take a look at that post I wrote about all the stuff I'm handling, and you can kind of know like what's kind of in the pipeline. We have one of the best, privacy technology teams, right? Very, very few people can build privacy protocols. We are on very good exchanges that other projects are very envious, right? We have Binance, we have Huobi, we have Bittrex, we have Gate, we have MXC. Like these are exchanges that a lot of these people have to pay a lot of money for, and we already have them, right? So don't keep on talking like, yes, it'll be nice to get an additional exchanges, but let's not forget what we've already have today, right? Whatever that we have, we still have a lot of good fundamentals to bring on, and hopefully with this tokenomics change, we have a sentiment shift. People feel more engaged, more empowered to do things for the project, and hopefully also with more of my posts that people can see what we could need help in. And please, like for example, I want to see someone from the community like champion this cause of like saying like, oh, there's a privacy coin list. Is if Firo's not in it, contact the author, right? Like, yeah, some of these coins are smaller market cap and smaller volumes than us, and why aren't we not featured, right? Do it in a respectful way. These are very low hanging fruit, and I would like to do that, but I don't have all the hands to do it, right? So this is something
That's not
community can
really
do.
where your
Yeah,
time's
yeah,
best spent. And
right.
secondly, before we wrap this up, Reuben, I just want to also state that it would be great if you could join us at some point in the future, just for when we have these big development milestones that are hit, that you could come on and essentially just explain what these products are and what these features are. And really, because you've been involved for so long, really you should get to essentially share in this the unveilment of them and the release of them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's not an issue. I mean, when I say taking a step back, yeah, the I guess
Yeah,
that can be
yeah,
interpreted different ways, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that would be great. So on that bombshell, that's all we have time for this time on this episode. So until next time, I don't know. Shit. No, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna redo that. Reuben, you got to wave. You got to wave goodbye. You're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Yeah, there we go. This should be on a blooper reel. Right. Anyway, I'll redo it. Anyway, on that bombshell, that's all we have time for this week. See you next time on Show Me the Firo.